Pope Francis continued his trip to Mexico today in one of the country's most dangerous cities.
Just moments ago, Pope Francis delivered a shocking announcement that has left millions in tears.
A lifestyle where we think that our source and life force lies only in wealth.
His heartfelt words echoed through the Vatican, signaling a profound change that no one saw coming. As the leader of the Catholic Church, his message touched on love, unity, and the challenges that lie ahead. This unexpected revelation has ignited conversations worldwide, as faithful followers grapple with the weight of his departure. What did he say, and what does it mean for the future? Reform and transparency. Pope Francis is not just a spiritual leader. He is a breath of fresh air for the Catholic Church. Since his election in 2013, he has championed the themes of reform and transparency, shaking up long-standing traditions and calling for a more open and accountable church. But what does this mean for the faithful? How is he changing the landscape of an institution that has faced numerous scandals? One of the most significant areas of reform has been addressing the issue of sexual abuse within the Church. For years, the Catholic Church has faced criticism for its handling of abuse cases, often prioritizing its reputation over the victims' voices. Pope Francis made it clear from the start that this would not be tolerated. He established a commission to address the crisis, aiming to prevent such horrors from happening again. This move has been met with hope and skepticism alike. Can the Church truly change? Or are these just empty promises? In addition to tackling abuse, transparency is a key focus of Pope Francis's papacy. He has called for openness about the Church's finances, which have long been shrouded in secrecy. By promoting clear financial practices, he aims to rebuild trust among believers who have felt disillusioned by corruption and mismanagement. His efforts to reform the Vatican's financial practices have included hiring lay experts to audit finances and ensure accountability. But will this newfound transparency lead to real change, or is it just a step in the right direction? Pope Francis's commitment to reform is not just about fixing problems, it's about reshaping the Church's identity. He has urged clergy to prioritize pastoral care over bureaucratic red tape, encouraging them to engage with communities more authentically. This shift towards a more compassionate and service-oriented church resonates with many, especially younger generations seeking a faith that reflects their values of justice and equality. As the world watches, the question remains, will Pope Francis's reforms lead to a lasting transformation within the Catholic Church? Can he overcome the inertia of tradition and resistance from those who prefer the status quo? His journey is just beginning, and the stakes are high. For believers, the hope is that reform and transparency will pave the way for a church that is not only a spiritual home, but also a beacon of justice and integrity in the world. Social justice focus. In an era marked by inequality and division, Pope Francis stands out as a powerful voice for social justice. Since becoming Pope, he has made it clear that his mission goes beyond the walls of the Vatican. He aims to uplift the marginalized, speak for the voiceless, and challenge systems that perpetuate injustice. But what does this focus on social justice really mean? How is Pope Francis reshaping the Church's role in addressing societal issues? At the heart of Pope Francis's message is a deep concern for the poor and vulnerable. He often speaks about the throwaway culture that exists in society, where people and their needs are easily discarded in favor of profit and convenience. This perspective has led him to advocate for economic justice, emphasizing the importance of fair wages, access to basic needs, and support for those struggling to make ends meet. He has asked tough questions. How can we call ourselves a community of faith if we ignore the suffering of our brothers and sisters? The Pope's commitment to social justice also extends to issues like immigration and climate change. He has consistently urged nations to welcome refugees and treat them with dignity. We are all migrants, he says, reminding us that everyone deserves compassion and respect, regardless of their background. This message resonates strongly in a world often divided by borders and fear. Are we ready to embrace our shared humanity, or will we continue to let fear dictate our actions? When it comes to climate change, Pope Francis has emerged as a leading advocate for environmental stewardship. His encyclical Laudato Si calls on everyone to care for our planet and the most affected communities, urging us to recognize that environmental issues are also social issues. He has challenged us to consider, how can we protect our Earth while neglecting those who suffer the most from its degradation? Pope Francis's focus on social justice is not just a trend, it's a call to action for all of us. He invites individuals and communities to reflect on their own roles in fostering justice and equality. The question now is, will we answer that call? Will we work together to create a world where everyone has a chance to thrive? Pope Francis believes that through love, compassion, and a commitment to justice, we can build a better future for all. Climate advocacy. As the world is grappling with the devastating effects of climate change, Pope Francis has emerged as a passionate advocate for the environment. His groundbreaking encyclical Laudato Si', released in 2015, has not just been a message for Catholics, but a rallying cry for everyone to care for our planet. But why is the Pope so focused on climate advocacy? What does he believe our responsibility is to the Earth and future generations? At the heart of Pope Francis's message is the idea that caring for the environment is a moral obligation. He emphasizes that the Earth is a shared home for all of us, and it is our duty to protect it. The Pope warns against a throwaway culture, where resources are exploited and waste is rampant. He challenges us to reconsider our lifestyles and consumer habits. Are we prioritizing convenience over sustainability? Are we willing to change our ways to preserve the planet for future generations? One of the most compelling aspects of Laudato Si' is its focus on the interconnectedness of all creation. Pope Francis highlights how environmental issues disproportionately affect the poor and marginalized. When natural disasters strike, it is often the most vulnerable communities that suffer the most. This raises important questions. How can we ignore the plight of those who are already struggling? What can we do to ensure that our actions do not harm the most vulnerable among us? Pope Francis also calls for global cooperation to tackle climate change. He recognizes that this is not just a local issue, but a global one that requires collective action. He urges world leaders to take bold steps toward sustainability, advocating for policies that protect the environment and promote social justice. As individuals, we can reflect on our own roles in this fight. Are we doing enough to advocate for policies that protect our planet? How can we encourage others to join in this crucial mission? In a time when climate change feels overwhelming, Pope Francis offers hope and inspiration. He believes that through collective action, compassion, and a commitment to stewardship, we can create a sustainable future. His message is clear. We have the power to make a difference. The questions now stand before us. Will we heed his call? Will we take the necessary steps to care for our planet and ensure a livable world for generations to come? The time for action is now, and the responsibility lies with each of us. Inclusivity and compassion. Pope Francis has emerged as a beacon of hope, advocating for inclusivity and compassion. Since becoming the leader of the Catholic Church, he has consistently championed the idea that everyone, regardless of their background or beliefs, deserves love and acceptance. But what does this really mean for the Church and its followers? How can we embrace inclusivity in our everyday lives? One of the most striking aspects of Pope Francis's papacy is his commitment to reaching out to marginalized communities. He has openly welcomed LGBTQ+ individuals, divorced Catholics, and refugees, emphasizing that the Church should be a safe haven for all. His famous words, "Who am I to judge?" have resonated deeply, challenging traditional views and encouraging a shift toward understanding and acceptance. This raises important questions. Are we ready to embrace those who are different from us? How can we create spaces where everyone feels valued and loved? Pope Francis believes that compassion is at the core of inclusivity. He often speaks about the importance of empathy and understanding in our interactions with others. He encourages us to listen to the stories of those who are suffering and to respond with kindness. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to overlook the struggles of others. The Pope's message invites us to slow down and consider, how can we be more compassionate in our daily lives? What small acts of kindness can we offer to those around us? His focus on inclusivity is also reflected in his teachings about social justice. Pope Francis understands that true inclusivity goes hand in hand with addressing systemic inequalities. He advocates for a church that not only welcomes everyone, but also actively fights against injustice. This means standing up for the rights of the marginalized and ensuring that their voices are heard. Are we willing to take a stand for those who are often silenced? How can we contribute to creating a more just and inclusive society? Pope Francis's vision of inclusivity and compassion challenges us to examine our own attitudes and behaviors. He calls on each of us to open our hearts and minds, to celebrate our differences, and to work together for a more just world. The question remains, will we follow his example? Will we strive to create a community where everyone feels accepted and loved? By embracing inclusivity and compassion, we can make a meaningful impact in our lives and the lives of others. Global influence. Pope Francis has become a powerful figure not just in the Catholic Church, but around the globe. His global influence stretches far beyond the Vatican, touching on issues that affect people from all walks of life. But what makes his message resonate so widely? How is he shaping conversations about faith, social justice, and the environment on a global scale? One of the key reasons Pope Francis has garnered such respect and admiration is his emphasis on compassion and humility. He often speaks about the need for a church that reaches out to the poor and marginalized, encouraging believers to take action in their communities. His calls for social justice have inspired movements around the world, urging people to fight against inequality and advocate for human rights. This raises an important question. How can we, as individuals, contribute to this global call for justice? Pope Francis also recognizes the interconnectedness of our world. He has been vocal about climate change, urging people to take responsibility for the environment. His encyclical, Laudato Si', addresses the urgent need to protect our planet, linking environmental issues with social justice. By highlighting how climate change disproportionately affects the poor, he challenges us to think about our actions on a larger scale. Are we ready to join this fight for a sustainable future? Moreover, Pope Francis has made strides in fostering interfaith dialogue, reaching out to leaders of different religions. This commitment to building bridges has opened up conversations about peace and understanding in a world often filled with division. His meetings with leaders from various faiths emphasize that unity is possible, even among those with differing beliefs. Can we learn from his example and seek common ground with others in our own lives? His influence is felt not only in religious circles but also in political arenas. Many world leaders look to Pope Francis for guidance on pressing issues like poverty, migration, and environmental stewardship. His ability to speak truth to power has made him a respected voice in global discussions. The question remains, will we heed his call for action and work together to create a better world? Challenges and criticism. Pope Francis has been a transformative leader for the Catholic Church, but his journey has not been without challenges and criticism. As he pushes for reform and inclusivity, he faces pushback from both traditionalists within the Church and external skeptics. So, what are the main challenges he encounters? How does he handle the criticism directed at him? One significant challenge Pope Francis faces is the resistance from conservative factions within the Church. Many traditionalists feel uncomfortable with his progressive views on various issues, including LGBTQ+ rights, divorce, and the role of women in the Church. They fear that his approach could lead to a departure from long-held beliefs and practices. This tension raises a pressing question. Can a church rooted in tradition adapt to the modern world without losing its essence? Another area of criticism is Pope Francis's handling of the sexual abuse crisis that has plagued the Church for decades. While he has taken steps to address these issues, some believe he hasn't gone far enough. Survivors of abuse and their advocates often call for more transparency and accountability, demanding that the Church fully confront its past. This leads us to wonder, is the Pope doing enough to protect vulnerable individuals and ensure justice for victims? Moreover, Pope Francis's environmental advocacy, while widely praised, has also faced scrutiny. Some critics argue that his focus on climate change and social justice detracts from spiritual matters. They question whether the Church should be involved in political and environmental debates. This criticism is not only a challenge for the Pope, but also raises another important question. Should religious leaders engage in global issues, or should they focus solely on spiritual guidance? Despite these challenges, Pope Francis continues to remain steadfast in his beliefs. He often responds to criticism with openness and dialogue, emphasizing the importance of listening to different perspectives. His approach encourages a culture of compassion, even towards those who disagree with him. He believes that addressing challenges head-on is essential for growth and transformation. As he navigates these turbulent waters, Pope Francis inspires many by demonstrating resilience and courage. His leadership reminds us that change is rarely easy, especially within an institution as large and historic as the Catholic Church. The real question is, will the Church evolve alongside him, or will it cling to the past? Pope Francis's journey illustrates the complexity of reform and the importance of embracing both challenges and opportunities for growth. Farewell scenes. As the world contemplates the future without Pope Francis, the imagery of farewell scenes brings forth a wave of emotions. The thought of his departure evokes a profound sense of loss for many who have found inspiration in his leadership. How will the Church cope without his guiding hand? What legacy will he leave behind as he says goodbye? Pope Francis has always been more than just a religious leader. He has been a symbol of hope and compassion for millions. His warm smile and approachable demeanor have made him relatable to people from all walks of life. During his papacy, he has traveled the world, meeting individuals and communities, listening to their stories, and sharing in their struggles. As he prepares to say farewell, the thought of those heartfelt encounters lingers. Will we remember the moments when he embraced the marginalized, offering them a sense of dignity and belonging? Imagine the scenes as he gathers with church leaders and faithful followers for one last address. The air would be filled with a mix of sorrow and gratitude. People would reflect on his call for reform, social justice, and environmental stewardship. They would remember his powerful words urging us to care for the planet and each other. As his voice echoes through the halls, the question arises, what will he say to inspire future generations to continue his mission of love and inclusivity? The image of Pope Francis surrounded by his beloved flock, tears in their eyes, captures the essence of this farewell. It's a reminder of the connections he has forged and the impact he has had on countless lives. His departure would not just mark the end of an era, but also challenge those left behind to carry forward his message. Can they live up to the ideals he has set? Will they continue to advocate for the marginalized and uphold the values of compassion that he embodied? While the farewell may be bittersweet, it also opens the door to new beginnings. As we reflect on Pope Francis's legacy, we are prompted to ask ourselves, how can we keep his spirit alive in our daily lives? What steps can we take to ensure that his message of hope and love continues to resonate in the world? In these farewell scenes, we find not just sadness, but also an invitation to rise to the occasion, to honor his teachings, and to create a future filled with compassion and understanding. Legacy of love and service. Pope Francis's papacy has been a testament to love and service, redefining what it means to lead with humility and compassion. From the moment he stepped onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica in 2013, his vision was clear. A church that prioritizes people over power and serves the most vulnerable. But what exactly has made his legacy so transformative? How will his commitment to love and service continue to shape the church and the world? At the core of Pope Francis's leadership is his unwavering dedication to the marginalized. Whether embracing refugees, washing the feet of prisoners, or advocating for the poor, his actions have consistently demonstrated that the church must stand alongside those in need. His famous phrase, "Who am I to judge?" in response to questions about LGBTQ+ individuals, symbolized a shift toward a more inclusive and compassionate church. This approach has opened doors for many who once felt excluded, sparking a renewed sense of belonging for millions. Pope Francis's love has also extended to the global stage. His groundbreaking encyclical Laudato Si framed climate change as a moral issue, emphasizing the connection between environmental destruction and the suffering of the poor. By urging world leaders to act and calling for collective responsibility, he has inspired people of all faiths to protect the planet. His focus on the earth as our common home challenges us to ask, are we doing enough to care for the world and the people who suffer most from its destruction? Beyond his advocacy, Pope Francis's simplicity has been a hallmark of his service. From rejecting the luxurious papal apartments to choosing modest transportation, his lifestyle reflects his teachings of humility and selflessness. These small but meaningful choices remind us that true leadership is rooted in service, not status. However, his journey has not been without challenges. Critics have questioned his progressive reforms, and his efforts to reform the Church's financial practices and address abuse scandals have faced resistance. Despite these obstacles, Pope Francis remains steadfast in his mission, reminding us that love and service require courage and persistence. As his time as Pope nears its end, the question lingers: how will we carry forward his legacy of compassion and action? Pope Francis has shown us that faith, when paired with love and service, can transform the world. His impact will endure, inspiring future generations to build a more inclusive, just, and compassionate society. Unfinished mission. As Pope Francis reflects on his transformative papacy, the idea of an unfinished mission lingers heavily. While his time as the leader of the Catholic Church has been marked by groundbreaking reforms, immense compassion, and a focus on social justice, many of the issues he has tackled remain unresolved. But what are the challenges that still need attention? Who will carry forward the vision he has worked so hard to create? One of the most pressing aspects of this unfinished mission is the ongoing fight against clergy sexual abuse. Despite significant efforts to address the crisis, such as defrocking high-ranking clergy, creating commissions to protect minors, and holding global summits, the wounds from decades of abuse have not fully healed. Survivors continue to call for more transparency, accountability, and systemic change. Can the Church ever truly regain the trust of those it has hurt? Will future leaders build upon the foundation Pope Francis has laid? Another critical aspect of Pope Francis's mission is his push for climate justice and environmental responsibility. His landmark encyclical Laudato Si ignited global conversations about the moral obligation to care for the Earth, particularly for the sake of the vulnerable. Yet, as climate crises escalate, affecting the poorest communities first, progress has been slow. Activists and followers alike hope that his successors will embrace and expand his vision for a sustainable, compassionate world. But will the urgency of this message remain a priority for the Church? Inclusivity within the Church also remains a work in progress. While Pope Francis has made strides in welcoming LGBTQ+ individuals, divorced Catholics, and other marginalized groups, there is still resistance from more conservative factions within the Church. His famous statement, "Who am I to judge?" marked a turning point, but many argue that deeper reforms are needed to foster a truly inclusive Church. Can the Catholic Church evolve while maintaining its traditions, or will this tension continue to divide its followers? As Pope Francis contemplates the end of his papacy, his legacy is undeniable. He has inspired millions with his humility and tireless advocacy for reform, yet the road ahead is steep. The question remains: who will take the baton and ensure that his mission of love, justice, and change continues to thrive? His unfinished mission serves as both a challenge and a call to action for all who believe in the values he embodies. Historical leadership. From his election in 2013, Pope Francis has cemented his place as one of the most transformative and historic leaders of the Catholic Church. As the first Jesuit pope, the first from the Americas, and the first to take the name Francis, he broke centuries of tradition, setting the tone for a new era of humility, inclusivity, and reform. But what makes his leadership truly historic? How has he reshaped the role of the papacy in a way that will be remembered for generations? One of the defining features of Pope Francis's leadership has been his commitment to humility and service. From rejecting the luxurious papal apartments and choosing to live in a modest guest house to driving simple vehicles, he has consistently modeled the kind of leadership that puts people before power. His approach has shown the world that the Pope is not just a distant religious figure, but a shepherd walking alongside his flock. Pope Francis's leadership is also historic because of his bold focus on global issues. He has used his platform to address pressing problems like climate change, economic inequality, and the refugee crisis. His encyclical Laudato Si not only called on Catholics, but the entire world to take action against environmental destruction, linking it to the suffering of the poor. By doing so, he positioned the Church as a moral leader in the fight for justice and sustainability. Can the Church continue this momentum once he steps away? Another hallmark of his leadership has been his efforts to make the Church more inclusive and compassionate. Famous for saying, "Who am I to judge?" When asked about LGBTQ+ individuals, Pope Francis has worked to create a church that welcomes everyone, regardless of their background. While his actions have faced resistance from traditionalists, they have also reignited hope for millions who had felt excluded from the Church. As his papacy nears its end, one question remains: will future leaders embrace the path Pope Francis has paved? His leadership has redefined not only the papacy, but also the way the Church engages with the world. His legacy will undoubtedly endure, reminding generations that historic leadership is about courage, love, and the willingness to challenge the status quo.